Good afternoon, and welcome to what's actually the final session in the Discovery Zone at the London Wine Fair. So thanks for all those who may have watched previous sessions. Our final session is has a very kind of grand title of how to succeed in a digital-first post-COVID world. We hope actually a lot of the advice and thoughts today will stay with you long after the show, because this is very much about how to run your businesses more efficiently and hopefully more profitably in the months ahead. Now, we've all seen a massive change over the last year with the switch to online and e-commerce, which I know we've covered a lot during the fair this week. And a lot of the focus so far this week has been more around how people have sold the wine and what kind of wines they've sold and how that switch has been made. Today is really going to be around going behind the scenes and looking at the management systems and the support systems and the kind of the IT, the nitty-gritty that actually helps make all those business decisions work, as it were. Now, clearly having a proper efficient management system is relevant at any time, but I think over the last year or so it's been a real wake-up call to many of the industry about what kind of operating systems they actually have and how fit for purpose they are going forward. So I'm happy to say I have some experts to help me answer those questions. So can I welcome our panel? So from Wine Owners, the founder of Wine Owners, can I welcome Nick Martin? From LiveX, one of the co-founders is James Miles. From Bottlebooks, the business that actually has helped put a lot of the London Wine Fair together, is one of the founders is Jonathan Harclerode, and actually representing the actual wine importer distributor businesses, we have Elliot Awin from ABS. So nice to see you all, chaps. Good afternoon. I hope you're well. Yeah, so we've got quite a big theme to cover, and we're going to hopefully look at different strands of how companies have kind of gone through the last year, and obviously how they can look forward. So perhaps if we do start off with kind of reflecting on some of the big changes that have had to happen over the last year or so. Nick, can I come to you first from a wine owner's perspective? Can you sort of give a view on or a thought on what demands you've seen on wine companies and the kind of changes that you've seen in terms of how they've had to run their businesses over the last 12, 13 months? To unmic.
Thank you for that. Hi everyone. Yeah, I think clearly a really big shift of this last period has been businesses needing to reflect the market's behavioural shift, and that means figuring out how to migrate your business online. I think particularly in the fine wine end of the market, there were a lot of websites out there, but not so many transactional websites. And one of the reasons I think for that has been the challenge of managing inventory and fulfillment well underlying that, because that becomes a really significant issue. How do you master inventory for e-commerce and all of your other channels, whether it's phone orders or LiveX at the same time, and make sure you're not overselling? And that's an inventory availability issue, and it's having a platform that enables you to scale in that way.
Okay, and have you seen, in terms of people coming to you with actual specific demands or requests, or have you been a case of more trying to, I don't know, put forward best practices that people can do?
I think it's been a mixture of things. I think it's been partly startups, so people taking the opportunity to get going on their own. There's been quite a bit of that, and looking to leapfrog and get online quickly. I think that's been one issue. I think another issue has been a number of businesses recognizing that they really need to get their house in order, that they need to be significantly better organized and unplug a lot of their people from the manual activities that had built up over a period of time. So So maybe the sort of the general theme there is just sorting a lot of the sort of accumulated stuff out that had built up over a number of years that needed streamlining.
Thank you, Jonathan. Can I come to you now? Obviously, your business is in a way has helped to glue a lot of the wine industry together over the recent years in terms of managing databases and kind of running a lot of the background systems for things like London Wine Fair. Can you give us a view from your point of view about what kind of demand you've seen and what services you've been able to provide the sector?
Sure. Well, I think an interesting thing about a business like Bottlebooks is that even though we were digital, we also had to, just like the rest of the industry, step back last year when businesses and had to look at what was going, where the market was going, and orient ourselves to ultimately to the direction that the industry decided to go on. As you know, we work with businesses both on the distribution side, helping arrange product information for their inventories and online shops, as well as on the events side, working for associations and events organizers, deliver increasingly ambitious digital projects. And around this time last year, the industry was really in a holding pattern and wondering what the next steps were. How long is COVID actually going to happen? Do we really, do we have to adapt, or can we quickly get back to business as usual? But what we saw happen over the last year and really solidify this year is that while I think we're all confident and eager for some of the in-person meetings to return, and there's still going to be a considerable amount of business that stays online because it's more efficient. You're not having to travel half a day to get in town just to have one meeting and then a half day to get back home again. You're able to go in, you can dial in, do your masterclass at home, for example, request your samples at home, and do a lot of your research with in a lot more efficient way. And we hear this across the industry, from the producers up to events and distributors, that while physical events and physical things are going to matter, definitely in the future, that's never going to leave the wine industry. They have been successful as well doing digital. So I think what we're going to see and what we have seen is more and more investment going into streamlining digital processes from producer through to retailer and to the event, and removing hurdles in the process. And to that extent, one last thing before I take a breath is that this is one of the reasons why we've been delighted to partner with wine owners recently to remove further hurdles in that regard. Is that because when you're having the data going from that you're always having to re-enter it into different systems along the way, it really slows you down and drives your costs up. And so together we're really excited to remove that hurdle for our customers.
Yeah, and do you think that over the year, people, well, the industry as a whole has become more confident with digital? I mean, this time last year, people sort of bunkering down a little bit, and then over the course of the year, more and more ambitious, more opportunities have arisen.
Absolutely, without a doubt. We have one anecdote we tell about an Austrian winery who was not exceptionally digital before. She participated in Wine Austria's first event in Moscow, where they did the virtual tasting. And after that, she said, this is one example of why I don't feel as much pressure to be everywhere all the time. But she felt like she got more business done in the virtual meetings because she could focus on her potential customer for 20 minutes. No distractions, nobody coming in asking for a top up. And she was able to focus on that and then move on to the next potential customer, 20 minutes. And she said she felt that was really efficient. And to have that come from somebody who was not in the past exceptionally digital, that was really inspiring to hear.
Yeah, excellent. James, can I come to you? I mean, now, obviously your whole business has been built on digital. So I guess the last year hasn't necessarily been that transformative in terms of how you run your company. But can you, from your perspective, give an insight on what impact it did have on LiveX, and perhaps more the producers you're working with and the customers you're working with, the merchants?
No, I mean, that you make a good point. I mean, I think we've been spending most of the last 12 years at least getting ready for this moment. And, you know, it's fair to say that the wine trade are not typically early adopters of technology. And I think that's for perfectly rational reasons, is that being an early adopter is high risk and expensive. And the wine trade are an incredibly pragmatic bunch. But, you know, clearly the dial has turned. I mean, while e-commerce, cloud-based systems, or teleconferencing, none of those things are particularly new. They've all been around for a while, but they weren't necessarily mainstream in everyday lives, and they definitely weren't mainstream in the wine trade 12 months ago. But I think, you know, there's been a massive shift, and those things are mainstream now, and it's really, I mean, I think Nick was alluding to, you know, a lot of new entrants coming into the market, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of wine merchants, new startups looking to come in and build new businesses around these new technologies, without any of the burden of the legacy which a lot of the traditional wine trade need to navigate. So, you know, yes, that there is, I think, a really, really exciting opportunity to move one's business online. That doesn't, whether that's e-commerce to reach a much bigger audience than perhaps you're currently able to reach, provide much better information to your customers and a much better experience all round. And equally to make the most of cloud-based systems such as Nick's or Jonathan's, or indeed LiveX's, in order to just automate much more of your business and make it much, much more efficient. Because one of the great things about being in the cloud is that systems have to, you know, are much easier to integrate and connect to each other, which makes automating process a lot easier. And as Jonathan's pointed out, you know, while we all moan a bit about Zoom or Teams, in many instances, it's much more efficient to have a Zoom conversation. And clearly, we're all going to be spending, or certainly, I mean, LiveX has customers in 42 countries. So, you know, using Zoom is a lot more efficient and effective. And it means that we can sell to customers face to face and sign up new customers much more efficiently than perhaps we could 12 months ago. Not because the technology didn't exist, but because everyone's now used to communicating in that way and find it perfectly acceptable and don't necessarily expect you to come and see them face to face. So yes, lots of opportunities to go for, but at the same time, you know, I don't think there's a choice now to sit back and not do something, because there are lots of new entrants coming into the market looking to make the most of these opportunities.
Interesting. Okay, well, it'd be good to go back actually, and perhaps later in the debate explore who those kind of businesses are. Can I come to you, Elliot? Now you're sort of representing more the kind of the front end of the wine trade in terms of those actually distributing, importing, and selling into the trade. So, do you want to give us an insight? What's it been like at ABS over the last 30 months, just in terms of like some of the challenges that you faced and how you responded to them from a organisational, transactional point of view?
Gosh, Richard, that's a pretty big question as to what's happened in the last 15 months. Quite a lot, to be honest. But in terms of digital efficiency, we also have to ask the question of what is the role of an effective importer, agent, distributor. And for me, we've got three different channels of flows that are really, really important to have good visibility on. And that is your information flow, your stock flow, and cash flow. And so these three different aspects, if you didn't have good visibility of them over the last 15 months, we'd be really struggling to find, have we got the right stock in the right place? Have we got the right content to be able to provide to our customers. We don't sell direct to consumer, but of course we need to help our customers sell to their consumers. And so having the right content, the right materials such that they can go out and sell their wine, our wines and the wines we represent, is really important. And then of course stock flow. One of the biggest problems over the last 15 months is big volume lines that were sold to or ended up in the on-trade. We don't sell to the on-trade, we supply regional wholesalers. But as regional wholesalers stopped operating because the on-trade just wasn't operating, big volume lines were well overstocked. So running our stock forecast on a previous 6 months very quickly ran into the hundreds of weeks rather than the sort of 20 weeks that we like to hold as a service to our customers. So being able to have the visibility of what stock was needed where, maybe perhaps even taking reporting tools out that managed to take forecasts from particular sectors with a bit of an insight into dangers that might be happening in terms of demand and pull through. And then of course cash flow, which I think fintech companies are well ahead of the wine industry. So I don't think we'll ever fall foul of cash flow and the integration that they then allow with things like Nick's integration and Jonathan in terms of that content.
Okay, and if you were sort of looking back at March 2020, if you're giving yourself a kind of mark out of 10, you don't need to say it out loud, but I mean in terms of where you were then to where you are now, in terms of the changes that you've made behind the scenes to be able to keep on top of all that kind of cash flow, stock management systems, what would your view be on that?
I think the stock flow the information flows is probably what we do best, and so I think we would have been high up there. So we were very reactive, managed to put together lots of interactive tastings, bring winemakers all over the world into the homes of customers and customers. But stock management, that has really been the hardest thing to work. And then with the delays of Brexit since January, a lot harder. So we're talking about wineries adding 2 weeks to their lead time, then hauliers adding 4 weeks to their lead time, whilst we're trying to cobble together a forecast of which sectors are working. I think having a more granular visibility of our stock forecast, and perhaps even with the help of the dreaded algorithm word, an algorithm that could help us forecast stock based on certain sets of parameters where we can switch on and off sectors of the industry, perhaps, we could have done a lot better. So as we've been working a lot on spreadsheets, and I must admit, I'm all right with spreadsheets, but the visibility that you can get from the spreadsheet is nowhere near as good as something that has been designed to do that job, not by someone cobbling together an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like lots of conversations I'm having or reading about is, with the as you say, the lead times, and now the actual, obviously with harvest shortages as well, and that whole supply chain has become even more acute. And I guess the more we come out of lockdown, the more the on-trade reopens, a lot of those pressure points are going to become even more intense in the kind of the months ahead. Nick, can I come back to you? I mean, obviously as a sort of a service provider, as a sort of an IT management provider, knocking on the door of wine companies for a long time. Do you feel like the last year has kind of made the case? It's almost like as James was picking up on, it's almost like if you're not investing and taking real serious investment in management systems now, there's a real danger of a lot of this are going to fall over. You unmute yourself.
One day I will learn how to use these collaborative tools, right? So yeah, I was reading a piece just this morning in the FT, and one of the phrases which I'm going to requote because I just think it's beautiful is, COVID has enshrined cloud computing as the critical enabler of enterprise innovation and partnership. And I mean, that's a lot of words, but a lot of fancy words, but actually it does say it all, because I think cloud computing has made it an awful lot easier for tech to reconfigure around the evolving business models. And those evolving business models are things like lower working capital intensity, so low inventory models that give you the opportunity to move to a more blended approach to your inventory position and what you can offer through your e-commerce and other channels, and enabling stockholders who are becoming suppliers of working capital to the wine trade, to merchants and retailers. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot has changed, and I think that a lot has shifted away from the kind of worldview of the 1990s and the noughties, which is the kind of the under one roof view, to a much more application specific, connected and collaborative world, where I think the power of the network is going to become absolutely defining for this industry.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, and I guess you just say it's. I guess your challenge is for people to understand what that power is, as well as like what it can do. Is that still the communication factor is still important here?
No, I think that, to answer your earlier question, there has been definitely a mental shift, and I think businesses understand that they are looking for technology that is able to support their business goals.
Yeah,
the other way around. In other words, it's enablement, not re-education, and that does mean that there needs to be quite a bit more flexibility around how the technology enables you to configure and drive those processes, and particularly where you're moving to a world of blended inventory models, stock feeds. It means that the sort of traditional, very hard-coded approach to buying stuff, bringing it into inventory and selling it, it just doesn't work anymore.
Okay. So, Jonathan, that mental shift. I mean, I know for a long time you've been banging on the door with the industry, trying to get them to take on more and think more around this whole management, information exchange. I mean, have you definitely seen that now? I mean, you think it's almost like if we have this debate in a year's time, we wouldn't even have to even address that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think what we have seen is, and I say this a lot, is that half of what we do at Bottlebooks, only half of what we do at Bottlebooks is technology, and the rest is interpersonal communication and support, supporting our clients through non-technical manners, and the non-technical plays a big role in that shift, I think, because what we've, especially talking to our customers during COVID, the ones who were taking decisive moves and still delivering sales quite consistently, it felt like, was they had a key focus on customer service, and that customer service is taking on, and that concept on one level is quite simple, but it actually is quite multifaceted. Is what is the customer service that you're trying to provide, and how do you best provide it? Are you, like, if you're a producer, are you a producer that just throws the information up on a website and tells your customers that you need to download it yourself, you need to type it into your systems yourself? Or are you a producer that goes the extra mile to make sure that not only have you completed the basic information in a way that your customers can consume it, but have you told the stories, provided the all of the collateral, everything that helps your downstream's customers be successful selling your product? Because ultimately those customers are going to come back for more stock, because you helped them be successable. So I think, again, technology plays obviously a very important role of it, but it's somehow under the guise of providing better customer service, also at a cost that you can afford, because I mean, customer service does have there's a cost of sales involved in that, and technology helps you do more with less.
Okay, thank you, James. Coming back to you, I mean, obviously building on the fact that you are a technology-driven company. Have you noticed then a mental shift in the customers that you're working with and your partners in terms of having a more mature, a more educated conversation around what you can actually do for them,
Definitely. I mean, I think we've seen a lot more interest in automating or integrating with LiveX over the last few months. I mean, one place where LiveX has really grown is in Italy, as an example, where with the lockdowns in place, and many of our Italian customers have been reliant almost entirely on travel or tourists and the on-trade for their business. They were desperately looking around for new avenues and new routes to market, and LiveX just happened to be something they could just plug into and automatically reach a big international marketplace for their products. So that's one example where the problems that we've been seeing required a very significant shift in behaviors and channel. We just in terms of the opportunity that is out there, I mean, for really all businesses, not just a fine wine business, but we had a US retailer, for example, who has plugged into LiveX, the inventory showing on LiveX, and has been able to massively expand the SKUs that they can offer to their customers. So if they were previously able to offer, say, 800 SKUs, they're now able to offer 10 or 20,000 SKUs, and that's allowed them not only to grow sales by an additional 20% for the last 2 or 3 years, but also to increase their reach on Google and on Wine Searcher, and increase their customer acquisition, increase the number of new customers that they're bringing into their business. So they've seen a big increase in sales, but also interestingly a sharp drop in stock. So that they've actually managed to cut the amount of stock they're holding by something like 80%, and reduce the amount of cost it takes for every trade. Their business has become a lot more scalable. So that's a very, very real example where a customer has used automation to not only expand their business, but also to improve their cash flow and improve their margin. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true, but it's a fantastic story, and it does show you what is possible.
Great. Well, we'll come back and talk about automation a little bit later on. But can I just ask you, as a business like LiveX, are you, through those kind of conversations and through those kind of projects with that customer, sort of, is it now sort of putting added focus back on you to enhance what you're doing, and actually making you needing to innovate and think about the systems and the opportunities that you can offer?
I think definitely. I mean, as I said, we have been preparing ourselves for this moment, probably prematurely. We've been doing it for quite some time, but we've definitely had to step up our level of investment in order to support all the customers who are wanting to move into this new world, and obviously adapt our various services to meet changing requirements. I mean, one specific example of that is around Brexit and all the additional paperwork that comes with that. And we have been able to introduce some new services around ABVs and commodity codes in order to make completing the Brexit paperwork a lot easier and a lot more automated, because anyone who's having to do that paperwork will know that the burden has increased immeasurably over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. Not entirely a COVID story, but just an illustration of the way we've had to adapt.
Yeah, well, it's the new world we're living in, isn't it? So,
it is, yeah.
Elliot, can I ask you? I mean, do you think that the management systems, the technology, the support systems out there, do you think they are in tune with what wine companies like you need? I mean, have you in terms of, like, you know, you mentioned earlier what the challenges are, do you feel as though there are the services out there and the almost like what you need and what's available for you to plug into? Do you think that now really kind of like come together as well over the last period of time?
Well, I think it's certainly been necessitated by the need for these things. And just picking up on something that James and Nick said is this stock visibility. And with all these new startup companies, because over lockdown, people have found fantastic ways to engage with consumers, whether that be digital and it then carries on into an in-person environment. One thing you see with all these new startups is they're using big yellow storage or their back garden, and therefore having to hold stock seems like such a waste, when specializing in engagement and specializing in being able to sell to your customers and not having to worry about cash flow, stock flow, just really selling. And so the idea of having a system such that our customers can see our stock and therefore allowing them to sell stock that they don't ever own, they see its visibility. It's all very protected, such that we only allow the visibility to the customers that we want to trade with or are reputable in terms of their ability to carry on trading. With the visibility that they have of our stock, it means they can sell whatever they like. And perhaps the idea of a platform and consolidated warehousing for bigger companies is are going to create so much more engagement with consumers, because, as James said, people are changing their lists from 1,000 SKUs to 10,000 SKUs. Now, that's great if the consumer knows what they're looking for. But if the consumer doesn't know what they're looking for, they really need that engagement and retailers to be able to convey which of the 10,000 SKUs they should be focusing on. So the platform's there to be able to do it. I think the idea is then that next step of allowing retailers, and it doesn't even have to be retailers, it could be bloggers or Instagram personalities who have a small shop that never holds stock. They just hear of a wine that's coming, they went and they've tasted it, they can then sell it with never holding stock and taking pre-orders. It also is far more efficient in terms of logistics as well. So I think that's really exciting, and I think there's definitely movements in the technology to allow that to happen. I think that's really important.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I can remember interviewing I won't say the company, but I remember interviewing a chief executive of a major distributor who was sort of like telling me about the new management system that they've brought in, and the fact that they can now tell which customers were actually profitable to work with and which ones weren't profitable to work with. And I kind of thought, well, is that really kind of what you actually want to be telling me? I kind of assumed they would be able to do that anyway, but I guess we've all come along a long way. I mean, just sticking with you, Elliot, I mean, I know a lot of people talk about management systems, and immediately people start thinking about, oh my God, how much is that going to cost me? You know, the IT, the investment involved. But I guess, you know, if you get it right, you know, you can use it to make money. It's all about actually improving your bottom line if you get that support right.
Yeah, I think with the last 15 months, turnover has decreased hugely, and so the only way to survive was to become more effective, more efficient. And so, indeed, whilst we shouldn't be looking at it as a person-saving role, I think that's a horrible way to look at technology replacing people, because that's not the idea. The idea is that those people, instead of keying orders in and keying order 3 times, we can have situations where a customer emails an order to a salesperson or calls an order to a salesperson. The salesperson then writes an email out to our order processor, and then the order processor keys in the order. And so this triple keying in or triple order taking process can be streamlined, and actually the order processor becomes someone who is engaging with and helping people sell. So it's the efficiency can be looked at in so many different ways, and I think the ability of creating more people to engage with consumers, I know I keep saying that, but I think it's really important, to engage with consumers, the better.
Great. Okay, thank you. Nick, coming back to you. Now, we've seen, obviously, the big rise in e-commerce and people moving online and having to sell direct, be it to consumers or be it direct into the trade itself over the last year. Can you just give us a sort of, from your point of view, what would be a kind of a checklist or a kind of a must-have for the companies who have done that they need to make sure that they have got right, just so that they can make sure that what they're doing is or what they need to be doing to make the most of that?
Yeah, so I would definitely go back to a point that Jonathan made earlier around content, because content is so fundamental in driving buyer engagement and driving your online revenues. So, whether it's producer level content coming through via Bottlebooks, or whether it is content for managing purchases and shipments coming through from LiveX, or whether it's content coming through from reviewers' websites like Parker and say Vinus, it's managing and curating that content is so incredibly important. And yet we see, to Elliot's earlier point about the administrative overhead, 50 to 75% of the working day of some people are tied up just in these activities, and they are redoing the same thing that everyone else is doing. So we're inevitably we're a very big believer in industry specific software that is information rich and driven, as well as providing the functionality for people to run their businesses, so that a lot of that overhead goes away. And I think that is a really important part of setting up your e-commerce. I think the other mindset issue is not thinking about your e-commerce and your inventory as two separate systems and two separate investments and two separate processes. Because if your e-commerce is going to work as part of an omni-channel operation, say you're perhaps selling over the phone and via email and offering for sale through LiveX at the same time, you've got to think of one as the master of the other. If you're mastering your inventory that is fully integrated with your e-commerce, that's really the only way you're going to scale it. It's the only way you're going to deliver an excellent customer experience as well, that's faultless.
Okay, great, thank you. Jonathan, can I ask you there? I mean, what sort of advice? I know it's not your kind of core business yourself, but I mean, in terms of offering advice to companies around managing that sort of like switch to e-commerce, what would you suggest?
Well, I think it maybe even ties in a bit into one of the questions in the chats where I think Caroline asked about what the wine industry answer to a PIM and inventory operations PXM is that there does need to be a holistic view taken towards what you're trying to accomplish, and you can't just set up an online shop without content. And just collecting content without a purpose also doesn't really deliver any value. So I think it is looking strategically at what are those stories that you're trying to tell about the products that you're trying to sell, and what do you need to do that. I think that's what is. That's the reason why Nick at Wine Owners and Bottlebooks have partnered together. We've done it precisely for this reason, so that there is an option there where you have the content and the inventory and logistics and the commercial systems seamlessly integrated under one roof, if you will, even though we are two businesses, of course, but we work very closely together, that you are able to deliver that complete vision. I think doing it when you're doing it sort of only halfway, you're not even going to get half the results. So you do need to look at the full vision of what you are trying to do and what you need to do it.
Thanks a lot. Just staying on that content conversation, James. I mean, clearly LiveX have you're amazing in terms of the content you're producing, and you've even gone down the route of employing esteemed editors and journalists to be part of your team. So, do you want to just give us a view on why content is so important to you and why you're investing so much in it?
Yes, I mean that's a great point. The great beauty of content is that it brings to life all the data. I think at its heart, wine, as we all know, is all really about stories. All business actually is really about stories and building a story around a product and trying to get customers to engage. So really good written content helps people get engaged, as does data. It gives people the confidence that if they're buying a case of Petrus, that this thing is really worth that amount of money and that it looks good value against other cases of Petrus, and to learn about the vineyard and the grower and the vintage. Clearly those are the key elements that bring a website to life, and it's also increasingly what the consumer is expecting when they come to a website. They're not just coming to buy, they're coming to be educated, they're coming to be given ideas. So content is just, in a modern e-commerce business, it's absolutely fundamental. And the great thing, as Jonathan, as Nick said, is there is an opportunity now to really automate that process. So create the product descriptor, and along with that, to have a chart from LiveX, for example, some pricing information, the critic scores, the notes, a recent interview with the grower, and other data, so that when the customer comes to actually purchase, or possibly on LiveX to sell, that they're making the best decision they possibly can do, and they're as informed as they possibly can. So absolutely, I mean, we're investing in content because it's fundamental to any digital strategy.
Okay, yeah, and Elliot, I know you've become a bit of a Zoom doing all your tastings. I did a Google search the other day, and it must have been about 100 different tastings came up with you on. So yeah, talk us through content for yourself then. I mean, I guess you were doing content before COVID, but how important it's become for you?
Yeah. So the tastings sort of happened on a whim, sort of mid-March, actually, just before lockdown really hit. So I started doing Instagram tastings live every Friday night, working with a partner retailer to sell 3 bottles of wine. But what's become seems now a sort of standard operation. But I think what I've learned, I think I've tasted wine with nearly 15,000 people over lots of corporate Zooms. I did 58 in November and December alone with lots of corporates. And it's amazing to see how engaged people can become with someone telling a story, and which is obviously being B2B previously, only B2B previously. I never really got too much involved with end consumers. So being able for agencies and distributors like ourselves, although we don't sell to consumers, to be able to market our wines to consumers such that there is then an obvious route to market for those wines through our traditional independent retail network that we supply, it allows us to create content and build our Instagram portfolio and build a presence for our wine. So I think in terms of the role of an agent and an agency with these wines becomes very much more marketing, because the logistics, which is traditionally a very big cost to the agency, is completely if such great efficiencies can be made such that we can then divert that into creating a more marketing focused approach, putting consumers first, but through that network of independent retailers.
Yeah, it's been fascinating actually to see how many agencies like yourself who aren't normally consumer facing, as it were, really making that switch and making it really successful And I suppose that's what, independent wine merchants and the major retailers, they're all there kind of almost the expectation that their suppliers are doing so much more around just it's not just about supplying the wine. Just moving on a little bit, we're of our time. James has picked up on it a couple of times around the whole area of automation, and actually the interesting comment here from is it Ewan Robertson, I think, on the chat around how automation can actually free up staff or free up employees to be a lot more front facing with their customers. Nick, can I come back to you? I mean, automation. I mean, it's in the context of what we're talking about. Can you sort of give us a view on what automation actually means? You still done it again, Chief. I got to get you every time.
So I guess scalability is what we're really talking about, and I think that does come back to what we were talking about earlier, with freeing up that administrative time and also reducing the scope of errors. I think connecting to your addressable market wherever that is, and these days your world is a very fragmented place. So it's a challenge, and connecting up to your source of supply. So there's that aspect, and I think our market in particular is naturally an incredibly collaborative one, in the sense that customers are suppliers and competitors are customers, and in many cases they're friends as well. But friends do fall out when things go wrong, and interoperability, that is the ability of one business to talk to another business digitally, creates certainty, it creates a network effect, and it expands the size of the prize for everybody.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jonathan, I know Bottlebooks, obviously you started off really with that whole making things so much more efficient through database ordering and everything. Can you just talk us through from automation how you see the benefits are for the sector?
Yeah, I mean, the foundation of Bottlebooks is standardizing the way that businesses exchange information between each other. And it's not just about what the attribute names are or which questions get asked and how that's all configured, but it's also that orchestration between the businesses. That was something that the whole reason that Bottlebooks works is that we had discovered that information is collected in broadly the same way across the industry and around the world, and it just happens to be done with Excel and email in many of the cases. And so we have, to some extent, we've done nothing more than create a replacement for Excel and email at the foundation, and then but it is around standardization, automation, and really focus on the processes, because as Nick said, when the processes break down, that can be a massive cost to the business and to the relationship. And so having that orchestration automated so that you don't necessarily, like, the repetitive tasks are not people in the loop tasks, but the people can focus on the more value adding tasks. I think it's that is what technology can deliver. So you can focus on the high value stuff, the things that really can drive your business forward in sales and profit.
Great. I mean, I'll come back to you, James, because obviously you have mentioned a couple of times. So for automation, what does that mean for LiveX? I know you obviously have your, I don't know how you pronounce it. Is that Elwan or Elvin, or I don't know how you say it? But can you just want to talk us through from your point of view what benefits it brings to your business?
Well, I mean, it's it's just a very exciting time, I think, because if one can imagine that in the old world, all of our information and data was siloed in a server under our desk, for example, hidden away, or in a cupboard somewhere. Now that everyone's in the cloud, really with the right kind of controls and technology, one can make all of that data available to everybody if that's what you want to do. So we're moving to a world where we're just so much more connected. So anyone with information, whether you're a journalist or a critic or someone like LiveX with a big database of prices and other content, or trading opportunities, for example, or Elliot with his wine list. The great opportunity now is that you can share that information with everybody within reason, and it becomes so much easier to consume and to use. So it's not just about cost saving, and clearly we will all become a lot more efficient, because you can from everything from the purchase order through to the delivery can be automated, including, as we've been talking about, the content creation. So that's clearly an exciting thing, because we can all focus on the things that we're best at, and all jobs in, I think, that environment become a lot more interesting. But more to the point, it just allows us all to really become much bigger businesses, and to provide a much better service to an experience to our customers. And so I think it's really, really exciting. I don't know whether that answers your question, but on a big picture view, that's it. And just coming back to another point that Elliot made, I mean, we are a technology business, but we recently did an audit of our supply chain, and a typical LiveX trade goes through 5 different warehouses, travels on 3 different vans. We have 4 different product codes, 15 different reference numbers, and there are 21 points of manual data entry. So, I mean, we're doing hundreds of transactions every day. And I think this might have been a few years ago now, but it still makes the point that that's a huge opportunity in order to streamline our operations and just focus on what it is that we're best at, whether that's creating content, or being great at logistics, or being a stockholder, or really looking after our customers and selling to our customers. And I think that's really, really exciting. So I think that's what it's all about for me.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Is that music to your ears, Elliot? That whole idea of, I see you nodding your head there. So is that music to your ears in terms of the whole idea of standardization and being able to, as Jane was describing?
That's exactly it. I think in terms of stock ordering as well, forecasting stock and being able to place stock orders from our side of things automatically, and pushing orders from our customers all the way through to the warehouse, the pick and the delivery. I think automation has to be there so that we can do things that actually are valuable to the consumer rather than are just requirements. But in terms of stock management, I think will for us be the best status of automation, such that we can work out where stock is going to be. And that, I mean, everyone talks about that last mile delivery. And so looking at, there was a question on the end of the panel, which is, which businesses do you admire the most? And I think it's a little bit flippant to say Amazon, but Amazon should really, if there was a marketplace such that with a logistics and an open source ability to order stock and come from a number of different suppliers, it would work so well for consumers. It doesn't matter what in the background, how that pie is split up between winery, agency, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. It would just be a much easier way to automate the whole process, because at the end of the day, all the consumer cares about is, are they getting a valuable experience out of drinking that bottle of wine? They don't care about where it came from. And so the more we can just minimize any effort that goes, or human error that goes into that, the better.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look at things, everything from Spotify to Netflix to Vivino, it's all very much about the consumer being used to having these aggregated automated processes that we're using all the time. Just aware of our time, we've got like 5 minutes, so can I just throw sort of one another big question, but if you can try and answer it in a succinct way. I mean, all of this sort of seems like, you know, if companies are moving more and more towards technology and using technology to communicate with, and there's more standardization, is it almost a danger of your business not being fit for purpose if you're not doing all this? And it's almost like, you know, having the best wine range might have been important 10 years ago. It's almost like now you need to have the right management system that can talk to other companies all over the world as well. Nick.
So yeah, I mean, I think perhaps we're in a market where net profit is quite tight. You know, a successful wine business might be doing, you know, 3% net profit. That's quite a well-run wine business. So I think the challenge is, how do you develop your business? How do you grow, and at the same time enable you to build a more profitable business? So if you don't do anything with all of this with all of this innovation that's going on at the time, then I think that's a challenge. But I think equally in embracing it and figuring out what kind of business you want to become, what business you want to develop over a period of time, figuring out how you can do that and improve your profitability at the same time through the blend of activities and inventories that you're selling is going to be really important. And I think that technology is the basis for you to be able to do that, to be able to grow your business without increasing your cost base at the same time, and doing that because you're being much more efficient, you're freeing up people, you're making it a much more pleasurable experience to work with you, and you're able to profitably grow.
Thank you. And a final word from you, Jonathan, on the same theme.
Yeah, I think technology definitely plays a role in this, for sure. I think mindset is also very important. We may sound like we have a lot of answers, but I think that we're also in many ways just at the beginning. And the road that the industry is going to be taking is a new one. And there is a room for those to take a bit more adventure, a bit more risk. Not everything is going to go smoothly every single step of the way, but that's how the industry evolves and how we learn and how we grow. So I think it's stocking up on and looking what can be standardized, automated, and exploring what's possible in the future. Excellent.
And James, just aware of our time, a final word from you, just to sum up.
Yeah, I think the good news for all of us in the wine trade is that this technology is getting so much cheaper. I mean, likes of big tech like Amazon and Microsoft and others have invested so many billions in making all this technology much more accessible and much cheaper, that even for relatively small businesses like ours, these technologies and automated processes are becoming reasonably accessible. If it used to cost billions to create these kind of networks within an industry, the investment now is in the in the thousands or tens of thousands. So it's become much simpler and much cheaper, and I think it's an exciting stage.
Brilliant, thank you. And the final word to you, Elliot.
Well, it's when you first said that businesses like ours would be out of a role, and I actually think there is a huge danger of the agency model disappearing because little retailers shipping wines directly. But it just means that our role changes. The fact that we hold a lot of stock and that working capital means that the working capital and the ability to 40 years of trading, building up a stock of this working capital is so important. So rather than retailers having to hold much working capital, new businesses can start up and engage, and therefore we own that. And then with this automation, it allows us to do that and have the right stock rather than just a lot of stock. And then being able to create this content so that we can manage this stock flow, information flow, and cash flow, and managing those such that the last person before the consumer can just sell is, for me, the most important thing. And the technology is looking like it will allow us to do that.
Brilliant, thank you, and thanks to you all for your comments. I mean, yeah, from my point of view, I have worked in other business sectors, and I think the most fascinating thing about wine, and why I continue to work in the sector, is the fact its ability to adapt and change. And every time you think there's a big crisis that's somehow going to like destabilize the industry, it has an amazing capacity all over the world to rework itself, and it's fascinating to find how technology is now really helping make those changes even more efficient and profitable for all, hopefully. So okay, thanks for your time. Thanks for the audience for you watching, and particularly to our panel, and hope you enjoy the rest of the fair. Thank you. Cheers.